Hi gang, and welcome to part 2 of my Q&A video. And again, I just want to say thank you for watching this question and answer video, and thank you so much for sending in your questions to me. I really appreciate it. Alright, so let's begin with part 2. Okay, so first question, and this one is one of the most popular questions. A lot of people ask me this, and it's what strings do you use and what gauge? And that is a very good question. Now, I tend to use heavier gauge strings on my guitars. For me, I just like the way they feel. I like the tension. I just like how it feels on my fingers. And I gotta tell you, I do like the sound of them. And I do know that people have strong opinions on what gauges, heavy or light strings. But for me, I just like the way it sounds, and I feel that I get a better tone and a better sound that I'm happy with when I have a heavier gauge string on my guitar. Now, I tend to use different gauges on different guitars that I own. For example, my White Falcon, I have strong 13 through 56 gauge round wounds on it. And on my other Gretsches, I have 11 through 49 strung on them. And the type of strings on those guitars are nano web elixirs. And I started using elixir strings because here in Florida, the humidity down here is horrible. And the humidity here seems to rust the strings a bit sooner than in other climates. And I like that they're a bit stronger than regular strings. During live shows, I would tend to break strings a lot, and at the most inconvenient times, right? I'm doing a really cool solo and poof, there goes the B string, really annoying. So the elixirs, when I switched to using them, I had less string breakage by 90%. Now you may be asking, why are you breaking strings so much, Damian? Well, it's because when I play live, I get really involved and I just dig in hard and, pick hard and, this is how I play. I get really stoked when I'm playing, Now, if you've never used the coated type strings before, you'll notice when you first put them on that there's like the tiniest of difference in the sound, and they feel about tiny little different too if you're not used to it the first time you play them. But you get used to it really quick and it will just sound and feel just like normal. Now I also put 10 through 46 gauge elixir strings on my Les Paul type guitars and my ES335 type guitars. And on my Tele guitars, I put 9 through 42 gauge elixir strings on them. I like them light on those so I can do the country bends. Now with my archtop guitars, I do things a little bit differently. Now I used to use Tomastic Infeld strings, but I've switched back to Martin and D'Addario strings mostly now. And I'll usually either put round wounds or flat wounds on my archtops. In fact, on my desk here, I've got a set of D'Addario flat wounds here. They're 12 through 52 gauge. But I do like using Martin strings from time to time, and I've got a couple guitars right now that are strung with Martin strings. And some of the guitars exclusively get Martin strings. So there you go. So basically in a nutshell, I prefer heavier gauge strings mostly, and I will use flat wounds or round wounds. Damian, do you have a favorite gig that you have played? Well, I've played a lot of gigs in my life, and some have been super memorable, and some I've totally forgotten that I even played them. But there is one that I've got in my mind that I'm thinking of right now. And it was the show that my band Blue Flame Combo did in 2001 at CBGB's in New York City. I'm so thankful to have played there. I grew up listening to bands that played there, that made their mark there. So me playing there was like a dream come true. And it's so sad that it's gone. And I hope it's never forgotten about. CBGB's, yeah, that was probably one of my, a gig that I'm the most proud of that we played at, that I got to perform at, to be on that stage playing, where so many other great acts played before me. So sad that it's gone. What an amazing piece of music history, of New York City's history, of the world's history in music that place was, right? But yeah, CBGB's gig was probably one of my favorite gigs that I've ever gotten to play. Billy Boy 3437 asks, I see you play loads of different guitars in your lessons. My question is, what's your favorite one to play and why? That's a tough one because I like so many of them, right? but I look at each of my guitars as a tool in my toolbox. And when doing certain jobs, certain tools work better than other tools. Some of my guitars do better at certain things than other guitars. But probably my most cherished guitar that's dear to my heart, and I have a long-standing bond with it, is my Gretsch White Falcon. That guitar and I have been through a lot together, and I've spent many years side by side with it. And not to mention, it's a great sounding guitar, right? But I gotta admit, the old Harmony guitars that I use a lot now, the 862, 863, 865, there's something about those guitars that I just love, and they're equipped with those Gibson P13 pickups that I just love the sound of those. And I also really enjoy my Gibson ES-125. I just love playing that guitar. It's a beautiful guitar. Super stoked to own that and to be the curator of it currently. Those are some instruments that I really love. But heck, I love all my guitars. And I'll tell you something, one of my favorite go-to guitars that never lets me down is my Epiphone Dot. That thing is killer. I think it sounds good, it's easy to play, I like playing it, it looks good. And that's a budget guitar, and I love playing it. I'm proud to own it. I'll own it forever. For my whole life, I will own that guitar. I just love that guitar. I'm just a guy that loves guitars. Dave in Georgia asks, do you ever change up your guitar picks? Use anything special or just standard? Good question. You know, when I first started playing guitar, and for many years after that, I just used whatever picks. Light, medium, heavy gauge. I mean, I didn't care. It could be Fender picks, Dunlop picks. I mean, whatever. I used quarters a lot. Sometimes just was using my thumbnail. But then for many years, maybe 15, 20 years, I would use these Dunlop picks. They're the purple ones. They're the thickest ones, I believe. And I use these a lot because, you know, like I said earlier, I used to play, or still play, very hard. And especially if I was playing some harder styles of music, I would really just be, you know, kind of sawing the pick in half. I break picks a lot, and I wouldn't get a lot of use out of the picks, but these lasted because they were so thick, and impossible to break these. I mean, you can't. So I used these a lot, religiously, for many, many years, but that all changed. So about 16 years ago or so, an acquaintance, friend of mine, who was the guitar tech for Joe Perry and Aerosmith, he sent me a bunch of strings and guitar picks and some pins from Aerosmith. And the guitar picks I really dug, and here's one of them. And they were just so awesome. He gave me about, 20 or so, and I just thought they were so awesome. I just used them all the time. Sounds weird, I know, right? It's just a guitar pick, right? But I want to keep playing a pick like this, so I had picks created to the exact same spec, white celluloid, that were 0.71 millimeters, and I have one right here. These became my signature picks that I use all the time, and I'll probably use forever. That's the plan, and I just love them, and this is what I use. It's a weird thing, but it's my thing, and I love it, and I love these picks. And here's a fun little side note. Any U.S. purchase of my DVD or a t-shirt or a CD from my website gets one of these picks along with it. All right, here's a question from Grant. If you had to run with no pedals directly into a tube amp, which one would you prefer? That's an easy one. I would probably prefer to use something that I like to use here at the house all the time. And that would be a Fender Hot Rod DeVille, and I use that very often. I got that amplifier in 1996, and I took that on tour with me. I used it live all the time, still do. I love it, use it in my lessons. I just love the way that amp sounds. I can get whatever I'm looking for, I can dial it in on that amp. And years and years and years ago, I used to play rockabilly without an echo or delay, so I wouldn't have any problem using that amp and having no pedals. And a lot of my lessons on YouTube now, if I'm doing Western Swing or Jump Blues lessons, I don't use any pedals at all. I just like the sound of the amp, from just my guitar straight into the amp, And especially since I'm really into music from the 1940s, those players didn't use any effects at all. It's just guitar straight into the amplifier. That's all they were working with, and that's good enough for me. I hope, Grant, that answers your question. And any Tweed style amplifier, I'd probably be good with plugging into, Joe asks, what audio video equipment do you use to record your lessons? Well, for video editing, I use a program called Wondershare Filmora. It's by no means an awesome platform, but the interface is pretty easy and simple to understand. And that's primarily the big reason why I'm using it. Now, for recording, I use the free version of Ableton Live. And I must admit, I really don't know what I'm doing on that program, but I know how to use it just enough to do what I do, if you understand what I'm saying. I know the recording basics. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. There's so much stuff that I just don't know how to use on that, and maybe someday I'll be able to learn. And I really got to give my father props, because he's the one that got me into using a digital audio workstation on the computer. And he's the one who actually bought me my Focusrite Scarlett Solo. But my dad was the one that was pushing me to use that, and I had never used one before. And I admit I'm not that computer savvy. And my dad was like, you gotta get this and start, recording on the computer and stuff. And man, I'm so glad that he pushed me to do that, and because it's the best thing ever. Can you remember using those Tascam 4-track recorders back in the day, if you're my age or older or a little younger? Remember those? You had the cassette, they sounded awful. I mean, I got them to sound as good as they could sound, but they don't sound anything like stuff that we can do in the computer nowadays. I mean, the world that we live in now with the technology, it's amazing, right? And that's one of the positives about, living now, right? And moving on, it's sort of the same question, but Lindsay asked what I use for tabs. Well, I use a really old version of the Power Tab editor that I got on the web for free. And that little scrolling bouncing ball that you see that I use on the tabs, well, that's just from using text on my Filmora Wondershare editor. I'm doing that myself, moving it over each note. It's very tedious. It takes a long time to do. But I do these weird things, but they work for me, and it just works, and that's how I do it. That's what I'm using. And the camera I have is a Canon G7X Mark II, or so what it's called. It's old, and I wouldn't mind getting a new camera. I wouldn't mind getting this camera again, but they're hard to come by, or they're very expensive, or they're out of stock. So we'll see what happens, but I wouldn't mind getting a new camera. Damian, do you ever watch videos from long ago and see how you've changed throughout the years? I signed up for YouTube 18 years ago. I was 32 years old. I'm 50 years old now. But to answer your question, I do not watch those videos. I'd probably cringe if I saw them, right? I was a lot younger then, and I definitely have grown up a lot. And of course I've probably grown up. It's been a very long time, YouTube in general has certainly become so much bigger, and it's such a different platform nowadays. But back then, 18 years ago, I started doing lessons, with one thing in mind. I just wanted to share my knowledge on this style of guitar that I love, rockabilly and the music. And I just wanted to share it with others. And, I had no ulterior motives. I wasn't trying to make any money. I wasn't trying to be famous. I wasn't trying to get likes or subscribers. I was just doing it because I just wanted to share my knowledge on this instrument and share the music that I love with others. That's it. That's the bottom line. And throughout the years, right, I think I've gotten a lot better at honing in this craft of teaching and presenting and making these videos. And, I've definitely matured a lot. I'm certainly a different person. Throughout the years in my personal life, through this journey, I've learned to become a more responsible person, be a father. Heck, I've learned how to be in a relationship. Lots of things in my life have changed throughout this journey. But I'm really proud of this journey, and maybe 10 years ago, I said to myself, not only do I want to teach old school guitar, but I want to be a positive force on the internet, right? And that's when I started bringing those positive messages, inspiring words at the end of each video. I just wanted to bring positivity and kindness to the internet. I think that's what it needs, right? And if I can teach somebody something and I enjoy teaching it to you, or if I can make your day better or bring you out of a depression or something that's bothering you and make your day more positive, then that's all I need to know to continue what I'm doing, right? But basically, I just want to be a positive force on this planet. I want to be here to do good. That's what I base this channel around. Guitars, having fun, being positive, being good, pushing goodness out into the world. So anyway, oh boy, next question. All right, here's a question from Carlos. I'd love to see you do some reviews on bands, concerts, and albums. I bet you have a great knowledge that you could share with us. Yeah, Carlos, that would be a pretty cool video series, I think. I wouldn't mind doing something like that if people are interested. But real quick, speaking of concerts, a life-changing show that I went to that kind of changed my life, that was kind of like an aha moment. I was about 22 years old. I saw Dick Dale perform live in a small club. Man, that was life-changing. And to this day, that show has a lasting effect on me. Plus, I probably still have the tinnitus from the show. Man, it was so loud, right? His show was so professional. The performance, his playing, all top-notch. I mean, the entire band had their act together. The showmanship, the stage antics, I was super impressed. And that show really inspired me to get out and perform. It kicked me in the butt and gave me the energy to go out and grab that, piece of the pie for myself, because I wanted to do that, just like Dick Dale. And that's when things really, went from just playing occasionally to playing all the time, after that. And one last thing, I'd like to mention that seeing local musicians perform live has really inspired me more than seeing like real rock stars play at big amphitheaters and coliseums. So go out there, check out some local musicians in your area, because you never know where inspiration can be found.